Welcome to The Good Pod, where today we'll be talking about The Good Wife, Season 1, Episode 3. I am one of your hosts, Jason Reed. With me, as always, Marissa Garza. Marissa, how are you today?
I am good. Am I the Kalinda to your Alicia, or am I the Alicia and you're the Kalinda?
Um,
What's our dynamic here? Or are you Carrie and I'm Alicia? Or am I,
you're Alicia, and I'm like Zach. You're like my mom. I'm a little punk kid that doesn't know anything and thinks he knows everything.
well, I'm trying to
Maybe
teach
you're
you how to
great.
use
Maybe
the
you're
internet.
Grace. You're Grace and I'm Zach. How about that?
Okay, we can be siblings. I like
Alicia
it.
Alicia is our mom. Alicia is
Yes.
mother. You could
Yes.
argue that Alicia is mother. So you and I are her
I
kids,
like it.
Zach and Grace. Okay?
I like it.
Let's go with that. I like that part. I like that.
Yeah, well, we're here back again talking about The Good Wife. This episode is interesting. I can't wait to talk to you about it. It's a little bit different than the ones we've talked about so far. So, yeah.
I like delving into Alicia's past a little bit. I think that's fun. I also can't wait to get into it. Much like every episode, we have to remind you of all the good stuff, all the things that you can do to help out this podcast, all the free, easy things you can do to let us know that you're enjoying the podcast, so that other people can see it in their feeds and it'll be pushed to them. So if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, or listening on Spotify, or any other podcast catcher that lets you rate and review the show, we would ask you to please do that. Give us 5 stars if you can. If you're on Apple, you can definitely write a review to let us know why you're liking the show. We really appreciate that. If you want to correspond with us, ask us questions about the show, upcoming episodes, you can always do that by going to thegoodpodfeedback@gmail.com. If you're on YouTube, down here, there's a thumb. You hit the thumb. That tells everyone you like the show. And then what YouTube will do is like, oh, people like this show. Let's show it to other people that we may think will like this. I mean, you can argue about YouTube's algorithms all you want, but it could work. So yeah,
Or leave
if
us
you
a
want to
comment or talk to us
leave us a
there as
comment,
well.
yeah, we look at the YouTube comments. We would love to interact with you in all of those ways. There's a barrage of ways that you can contact us to let us know what you think about the show. Give us some of your thoughts about what we've seen, what we will see to come. So we're here for all of that. We would love to interact with you guys.
Also, like your favorite 2009 meme, like what does it feel
Yeah,
like going back in time?
yeah.
Love to
It's
talk about
definitely a time.
that.
Definitely a time capsule.
Yes. Love it.
So Marissa, I've been getting sponsors for the
Yeah,
podcast.
you've been really working hard.
Yeah, I've been trying to relate them to the episode. So I got in contact with a little group and I said, hey, any
Oh,
chance you guys, I think you guys would be interested in coming on for this episode. And, the folks from the DARE program, they were like, the message that is portrayed here in this show is very important to us. So DARE said, hey, we want to advertise on your show. So they gave me a little blurb tree. It said, just let them know, hey, DARE, keeping kids off the dank since 1983. All right, Dare, give us that check.
fair. Yeah. I mean,
I just,
yeah, the check in quotation marks. Love it.
mm.
Uh,
I mean, listen, talk about the differences between 2009 to 2024, and how us as a society and a culture feel about marijuana, and
and
how it felt about it in 2009. Vastly different.
yeah, yeah, it was a different world. Did you graduate from Dare?
I'm pretty sure I've gotten a certificate or two from Dare in
Yeah.
my days. Yeah.
Well, when I was in school, it was like, just say no. And then it turned into dare. And then it was like a whole thing. It was like, let's put a cop in your school. And I was like, this is different. Like this is going in a direction I didn't think it was gonna go.
Yeah.
But yes, thanks to Dare for keeping us off the dank since
The dank. Do you have dank?
83.
Is that dank? Gosh.
It was so cringe. But yeah, they are a pivotal, part of this story. So
Totally.
should we get into the case of the week?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right. Well, this case has to do with Alicia and her time back in Highland Park, Illinois. Before we really, like, I just want to set the stage, the setting of Chicagoland, the suburbs that surround Chicago. You got your north side, you got your south side. You'll notice that, like in the last episode, I think someone said to Will, It's so I never thought I'd see you north of the Loop. Like, the Loop is, like, the center of Chicago, and, like, rich people are usually in the north, and not so rich people are usually in the south, and Highland Park is in a very north suburb of Chicago. This is where, like, if you've seen Home Alone, if you've seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off, like, people that say they're from Chicago and are rich are usually from Highland Park. So it's kind of like if you're in Chicago and you hear Highland Park, or at least you're from there, you're like, "Oh, I know I know what's going on here. I know what type of people these are." But that I mean, the show I think does like a good job kind of setting that up regardless, but I just wanted to let everybody know that that is true to form.
I mean, listen, there's a difference between the world of The Good Wife and the world of something like a Shameless, right?
Yes.
Where both
Yes.
take place in Chicago, but two very different parts of Chicago.
Yes. Yeah, and, like, no one pays attention to the West Side. I just have to say, like, the West Side is, like that's my I love the West. I'm from the
If you were to set a show in your turf on the West
on the
Side,
West Side,
what would this show be about? Like, what is there on the West Side of Chicago
it's
for us
like
to know about?
Polish Mexicans. Like, it would be
Okay.
like I think it honestly, if there was another season of Gentrified and they moved it to, like, Pilsen, which is on the west side of Chicago, and then saw, like, how basically this is like a soapbox of mine, but, like, Polish immigrants have moved west into the suburbs. So, like, we just, like, move west. Like, we don't move north, we don't move south, we just move west. And then, like, Mexicans came into the same areas that Polish people were living in, and now Mexicans are being pushed west because of gentrification. So, I think it would be interesting to kind of explore the crossover of those 2 types of cultures and, like, what that means for the neighborhoods. My We see it a lot because my grandparents still live on the west side in Pilsen, so I get to see, like, how it impacts the day to day. It's different than Shameless, but also has, like, some Shameless tendencies.
You hear that, network executives? Get on it. Get that show started.
Yeah, show some
Give
love
us
to the west
exec
side.
producer credits. Yeah, give us
Yeah,
executive producer credits, and we'll call it even.
yeah. So, this episode starts with someone visiting Alicia in the law firm, someone by the name of Kenny. Everyone thinks that Kenny is her son. I thought that was pretty funny. Like, "Oh, your son is here." And Kenny is there because he needs a lawyer because he was at a party and he was there to get some weed, some dank,
Some
and
dank, some dirty dank.
he thinks that, like, he's in trouble here. So he goes to Alicia. We come to see through a couple of flashbacks that Kenny was, the kid of one of Alicia's quote unquote friends. Like, they weren't real friends. They were just,
I
friends.
think they were friends as long as it was convenient to both of
Convenient.
them, as long as they were in the same space, as long as they were in the same tax bracket, as long as they were in the
Yeah.
same status club, they were good friends, but not someone that you would call a ride or die. Lauren and her
Yes.
husband were not those people. As soon as Alicia and Peter lost their status, lost their standing in society, Lauren threw Alicia away like an old, old piece of trash.
Yes. Yeah, but Kenny always had, like, a special place in Alicia's heart because you could see, like, through these flashbacks that Kenny was ignored by his mom, and, like, Alicia used to babysit him, so she's like, "Okay, how can I help you?" So she asks Kalinda to find out what's going on in Highland Park. Like, what happened? Are there any police reports or police alerts out there? Because basically all Alicia wants to do is take Kenny home to his parents and say, like, "Hey, I have weed." Like, this is this is it. Like, she doesn't know anything else that's going on.
Now, doing our IMDb research,
Yes.
where is Kenny from? Because I know I have seen Kenny
Kenny.
somewhere.
I don't think I looked up Kenny. Oh my gosh, they
Oh,
killed Kenny.
Marissa,
I don't
you killed
know how
Kenny.
cute Kenny he was from something though.
I found where we know Kenny from, where I know Kenny from. So looking up his IMDb, he is one of those faces that we talked about this in other episodes. Like I definitely have seen that kid in 1,000 things. So where I most know him from, I'm a big Marvel head, so I know him from Agents of Shield. He played a really like creepy, weird bad guy in that show. So that's that. He was also in the show Animal Kingdom, which I was a big fan of. He played he played the lover of one of the brothers that was the main focus of that show. So that's also where I know him from. So, but he's also, like I said, one of those faces. Just like I've seen this guy in a thousand things, but he's just not famous enough to know his name. But I'm just like, I definitely seen him in a thousand places.
Kenny's been around. So Alicia wants to drive Kenny home and like kind of make him like explain what's going on to his parents. So she does, and she gets a really cold, weird, awkward welcome by Kenny's mom, Lauren. Lauren, by the way, is played by Elizabeth Marvel, and she has been in like all of the
She's the
things.
queen. She's the queen of I've seen you somewhere before. She's the queen of that. For me, I think of her credits. I think I know her most from Homeland and House of Cards. I think are my big ones I know her from.
Most recently for me, it's Mrs. Davis in The Dropout, but she definitely has been in a bunch of things. She also had like a long reoccurring role on Law and Order 2. So if you watch this episode, you will know exactly who she is in this situation. But she is like, "Hey, Alicia, what are you doing? Why are you here? What's
You
going
you would
on?"
you would just think that Alicia had a scarlet letter like
Yeah.
on her chest. You would think she was the one that was philandering with someone else. Like just the way that she treated her, like she's like Lauren's obviously having a party, and she's like, "Oh my god, the shunned one is here! Quick, come in before someone sees you."
I'm actually surprised that she was let into the house.
Hmm.
Like there's a big porch there. They could have like had this conversation outside. But Alicia says to Lauren, like, "Hey, I'm sorry to do this. I'm sorry I'm here, but I have to talk to you about Kenny." And this gets Lauren to be like, "Okay, well, come on into the house." And she's like, "Well, you didn't have to drive here. You could have just called." And Alicia's like, "Yeah, but like a boy that I saw grow up asked for my help." This is like really important to Alicia. And I can imagine like in a time where her life is turning upside down, like being true to herself is like a real motivating driving factor for her and why she wants to handle this case in the way that she is.
But listen, I know Alicia is our hero, right? She
Yes.
is
She's
she
mother.
is
We
the
just said
one.
it.
She is mother. But is there anywhere in Alicia's mind that is like, I'm like, your kid's in trouble, and you think
Oh,
I'm the bad person?
yeah.
Like your kid's got weed in his possession, okay? So I just wanted to come and show you up front that we all got some skeletons in the closet, little Miss Lauren, okay?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It's not just me. It's not
Yeah.
just me.
They don't really portray it like that, but I'm just in the psyche of Alicia the character. Is there anywhere in her that's like, this is like a good opportunity for me to, like, kind of like we all got problems, okay, Lauren? I'm not the only one. Like I wouldn't shun you. I'm helping you, but you shun me. But it's okay. So So I'm just wondering if like there's a motivation there somewhere in Alicia. And again, I'm kind of writing the show that wasn't written, that
Oh,
wasn't given to us,
where'd you get that from?
which I accuse you of doing all the time. I was wondering in the character's motivation, is there any of that in there? And I would have loved if like a Kalinda would have brought that to Alicia's attention. Like, so is this also about the fact that you want
Mhm.
to show that, they have problems too? Like, I think that would have been interesting.
I think that like at this point, I think it's in the back of her mind, but I think as from what I remember of Alicia's character as she goes on, I think like later Alicia would totally be a motivation for her. But
Mhm.
right now she's just trying to like figure out who she is again and like being herself is important. And she wants to help Kenny because he was a kid that grew up in front of her, which was a weird sentence to say, but is what she said. So while she was in Lauren's house, she gets a phone call from Kalinda saying, "Hey, guess what? They're actually Kenny is actually wanted by the police." And just at that moment, Kenny is getting arrested on the front lawn for a felony murder outside of his parents' house. So as much as like Lauren wanted to hide the fact, like she thought that Alicia being on her front step was gonna be like the talk of the town. You can't really ignore police
You
cars
got
and arrest.
you got bigger problems now, baby, than me.
Yes. Yes. So Kenny is being charged with felony murder. The story here is that he broke into a guest apartment of a house. A security guard was called, and the security guard ended up being murdered. But because Kenny's fingerprints were on a window, they're basically saying the security guard was here because they were trying to break into the house and there's nobody else here. So it had to be Kenny and or Brian, who was also with him, that
Yes.
killed the security guard. And it's very important that we know that the security guard died at 11:20 p.m.
Yes, folks, keep
Keep that
that
in mind.
time in your mind. And now the kind of the global thing, because I was getting lost in the details. So like I was like security guard, like they didn't break into like a business, but I think
Oh,
rich people.
Highland Park.
Yeah, they got security guards because I mean the story, the global story is that they were going to Spencer's house to get some weed that Spencer had in his house in his little apartment above the garage, but
Yep.
Spencer wasn't there. But as we'll find out, Kenny alleges that Spencer told him just to help himself to the weed in the house. And as they were getting in there, they got called by the security guard, and oops, security guard's now dead. So that leaves us like, what happened?
Yeah, and um, I can imagine that, like, Spencer's parents want a resolution to this quite quickly, so it's not like they have a lot
Mhm.
of like, the police don't have a lot of time to be like, "I don't know, let us investigate." They're like, "Oh, fingerprints, that's enough. We can at least make an arrest and then figure it out later."
Yeah.
So, yeah, unfortunately, Kenny and Brian, I think, are both charged in this case at this point. And Alicia wants to help Kenny, but she wants to not be named as the attorney on record because this is seen as, helping a friend. This could be misconstrued in a lot of different ways. So, who gets assigned to help Alicia in this case? No other than the one and only, never been to trial before, Carrie Hagos.
Our guy Cary, who in the early running of The Good Wife is kind of a douchebag. So it's really interesting to see, and the information, as you said, that we learned about Carrie never going to trial was such an interesting facet to his character. Someone who's always up to this point seemed so confident and so cool under pressure. To see him struggle in this way, as we'll get into later, was such a interesting facet to his personality.
Yeah, and you can tell that he, like, walks into court, he's, like, schmoozing with the DA, like, flirting a little bit, and then he's like, "Don't worry, this is gonna be easy, like, we'll get you home," and he finds out that Brian is already, like, put on record that he's accusing Kenny of this crime and has already made a deal with the state's attorney's office, so it's not as easy as Carrie thinks it is,
Your boy
and
done already snitched. He
yeah.
snitched as soon as he got him in that police station. He started talking, he started singing, and just accusing people of different stuff. This guy just could not wait to flip on his friend.
Yeah, yeah, he was like, I gotta save myself, so, sorry, Kenny." So they have to go talk to Spencer because this was Spencer's place, and they were basically trying to prove that there is no burglary. So it was Carrie and Alicia go to visit Spencer at school. This is really interesting because it was the school that Alicia sent her kids to, and we'll talk a little bit about like where Grace is at in this episode a little bit later. But she's being forced to really, really revisit like landmarks in her life, places in her life that were important to her. So she's there and she gets a little flashback of how like Grace didn't like school and stuff like that. But Carrie takes this as like a moment to just like schmooze and bro down with
Oh my
Spencer and be
gosh.
like, yo, bro, like I know like you had fun with Kenny, right? But like it's not gonna happen anymore because he's like going to jail.
Listen, I mean, give Carrie his
It was
flowers. He
good.
was he was able to like relate to this kid in a way that I think is probably even too young for Carrie in this moment. It's like, yeah, bro, no one else understands you and Spencer's relationship. You knew they were going to your house, right, bro? I'm like, all right, Carrie, cool. Carrie's been watching a little bit too much MTV in 2009, and he's picked up some of the vernacular and kind of appropriated it. So I thought that was a very fun little peek into how Carrie. I think this whole episode was a fun little peek into
Mhm.
how Carrie handles his business and how he handles different people in this case.
Yeah, and at the end of that conversation though, like Carrie's like, "Oh, well, I mean, we could at least get it down to 5 years." And Alicia's like, "But he didn't do anything. Why should he go to jail at all?" And
Carrie's like, well, that little just that little like thing of like, oh, he didn't do it. Sure,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah. So he's still like on the path to like making a deal. At the same time, Alicia is pairing up with Kalinda to do some more investigation in Highland Park. And so their situations are not necessarily complementing each other. They're going
Well,
off in different directions.
before we move too far into out of the school aspect of it, I did find it interesting that they sent Kalinda to go talk to Brian. Brian comes,
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, sorry, Kalinda comes back and reports, well, that Brian kid, he's got he's got a temper on him. I'm like, why couldn't we see Kalinda confronting Brian? I think that would have been a fun little scene to see Kalinda confronting him and him going off on her and her, I'm sure, handling him.
Well,
That would have been a fun scene.
especially because when Kalinda arrived at the school, she's like, "This looks like a school I used to I used to vandalize." So, she already has, like, some bias against students who
Mhm.
attend these type of schools. So yeah, it would have been fun. But after leaving the school, so yeah, Carrie's like, okay, I'm gonna go make a deal. And Alicia's like, well, we still need to get more evidence. So let's go back to Highland Park. So Kalinda and Alicia go on like a tour of Highland Park. They talk about the homeowners association because every lawn is like super manicured. There's lots of rules. I like that Kalinda was like, I can't see you like living here. Like that is not something that
Mhm.
I see you doing. And Alicia's like, well, I did for 10 years and I liked it at the time. So it's already interesting that Alicia's showing herself as somebody different at this time. It's only been 3 episodes. I don't know. I guess it's like a couple months in
I
the
mean,
timeline of the story.
it's been a
Like,
little over 6 months since Peter got since
yeah,
that press conference, so you would think probably 8 or 9 months that she may have been out of Highland Park.
yeah, yeah. So she's a little bit different here. They go to talk to Kenny's neighbors and have a conversation with a caretaker who was working with someone and saw someone outside after 11 again. This is important. 11 p.m.
Mhm.
So they're like, "Oh, okay." At the same time, Carrie is taking the DA out to lunch, wining and dining, buying steak, having all the conversations, and trying to talk his way into a deal. I have to say, he is a very good negotiator. He
Yeah,
really was able to like have control of their conversation and get down. I think at the end of the lunch, he was down to 2 years and is
yeah.
like, if you can get to 2 years, then we'll make a deal. Again, back in Highland Park, again with the 11 o'clock, they have this timeline because the security guard died at 11:20. So they're trying to figure out how long it took the security guard to get from one place, from place A to place B. And in the middle of this, Kalinda says the average running time or running speed of someone is this much. And we learned that Kalinda was a
Well
track coach.
I mean, she says, "What if I told you I was a track coach?" I don't know if she was a track coach, and I think this was actually measuring whether or not what's his name? Kenny could
Yeah,
get from Spencer's
that's right.
house back to his house in the amount of time that the DA is saying it would have taken for him to actually kill the security guard.
And so they show up at Spencer's. Spencer's dad comes out and is like super unhappy, yells at them. I think this is the house though. Like I meant to look this up earlier. This may have been like the Ferris Bueller house. Like this is a house I've seen like in multiple things before. But they were really counting on Spencer to testify to say that, Kenny didn't break in. And Spencer's dad's like, no, that's
What if
not going to
what if
happen.
Spencer's what if Spencer's dad is Ferris Bueller?
Oh my God. No, he would
Oh
never.
my
Do
gosh.
not besmirch
Maybe he's
Ferris like
changed a
this.
lot, Marissa. You don't know
No,
What Ferris been up to. Maybe
no,
he got old and crotchety and doesn't
no.
want his son smoking that dank. I know we all want to think that Ferris is probably smoking dank with his son. That's how cool Ferris is. But maybe Ferris has changed a lot. Okay.
Oh, don't ruin my
We don't know that
dream.
man's life.
He's the sausage king of Chicago. Yeah, I mean, people do change. You do have a point. At the same time,
Never know.
like Carrie, like this is the deal that Spencer has made. Like this whole thing is because they're like working against each other. And they go back to the law firm, and Alicia's like, "What?" And Carrie's like, "I told you what I was gonna do." And Alicia's like, "No, no, you didn't." And he's like, "Well, I told Diane."
Oh,
So
Diana.
the drama ensues between them or continues to build between them.
Mhm.
And it's time for Carrie to show up at court. He is so nervous, Jason. Like it was painful.
Listen, it was good to see because the Carrie we've seen in the past 2 episodes has been a super confident, you could say also cocky Carrie that we've seen. And as they're getting ready for this, Kalinda mentions to Alicia, "Well, Carrie's never actually been to court, right?" Alicia's like, "Wait, what?" And Kalinda reveals, no, this guy pleads all his cases down so that he never has even had to go to court to actually try a case. So that was something that was very interesting to know about Carrie in these moments that we see him as this kind of young hotshot lawyer when he's never actually done any real lawyering. All he's been doing is making deals and doing negotiations and maybe having his clients maybe do time where he could have actually, if he went to court, got his clients off completely scot free. So I think that's a really definitely kind of deficit of character for Carrie, where he's like, I don't know if he's scared to go to court or he's just try doing what he wants to do. But I think that was a very interesting wrinkle in Carrie's character.
Well, and he mentions in some of the side conversations, 'cause, like, during this whole thing, Alicia's, like, trying to help him, like, "Go do this thing," and he's like, "Yeah, I know." It's, like, on the 3rd page of his notes, and it's, like, on the top of Alicia's notes, so you can kind of tell, like, the difference in their experience here, but he says, "Litigation was never something I was really interested in," so he just
Mhm.
wanted to be, like, behind like, not a litigation lawyer. I don't really know all of the lawyers, but not in court as much is basically what I took away
Maybe
from
you
that.
want to be like a corporate. Maybe you should be more of like a corporate
Corporate lawyer,
lawyer. I
yeah.
think that would probably be more Carrie's speed. I don't know if he's really should be trying like civil and criminal cases. So that's interesting. Yeah, like you said with the nose, it shows that he and Alicia are thinking along the same lines. It's
Yep,
just that Carrie can't get his ish together in the moment to really bring the notes like without having to reference them constantly.
yep, yep. And Alicia decides to go to Highland Park, brings the kids, which is the whole other storyline, which we'll talk about in a minute. But she goes to basically tell Kenny's parents what happened in court that day because they did not show up at court. And when she's there, and after she picks up the kids, she's like, "Okay, kids, we're gonna go one more place." She takes them to the crime scene. And again, this is very important because they zoom in on the clock. It is 11:17 p.m. when
Mhm.
she goes to the house. And she goes to the house and she like is looking at the apartment, trying to figure things out, trying to see if she can gain any more information. And that's when the sprinklers go off. And this is the thing that cracks the whole case is
Yeah, I mean,
the
because
sprinklers.
previously when they were in court, Alicia is looking at because they had the model of Spencer's house, and she's looking at it. She's got that kind of house eureka moment, right? She's like looking at it, she's like, maybe I should go test a theory. And
Yeah.
because as she tells us later, she knows when all the things happened in Highland Park. So she knows that something was happening probably at 11:17. If that kid, because the kid says he was behind the bush watching Kenny kill the security guard at 11:17 when the assault happened. So Alicia uses that information to test, a theory. That's why she went over to Highland Park in the first place.
Yes, that was one of the main motivations in that
Mhm.
situation, and she gets, covered in water, which then I loved that the savior of this whole thing was bylaws, because the whole reason that the sprinklers went off is because in Highland Park, you have to water your lawns at night because they wanna save water, and also, like, every lawn has to be, like, super manicured. So, Alicia comes walking into court the next day with the bylaws of the Highland Park Homeowners Association and basically just shuts the case down and saying, "You to Brian on the stand, who was being questioned in a very, very messy way by Carrie. It was like,
Mhm.
"Okay, so you were here at this point, and then but this point, we've already established this is going on." And Alicia just, says, "According to the bylaws, there has to be watering. Were you wet at this point? The sprinklers would have gone off. I know the sprinklers go off at 11:15 PM."
Like, I love how she just took the case over from Carrie. She's like, "All right,
Yeah,
Carrie, sit down. Like, I got this."
I
Like,
got this.
so yeah, I love that. That was a good way to really prove her case.
And again, bylaws. Everyone says bylaws don't
Marissa,
matter, but
the
they do.
listen, you strike me as the law and order, like you would strike me as an HOA like enforcer.
No,
Like
no, no,
you would go to every law and like
no,
measure
no,
with a measuring stick on the lawn, like my laws say
no,
that you
no,
cannot have more than 2 inches on your lawn.
no. I hate HOAs, but I do love a good bylaw. I am like, I don't know what it I do love, like and for instances like this because they're written and nobody remembers them, but then they can come and, like, be reinforced in some situation. I've just been in
Marissa,
too many nonprofit, like, boards, things like that, where it's like, we have to do this way, and then it comes back in the bylaws.
were you the class pest in this in school?
No,
Were like teacher says we need to do it this
no,
way, and this is the way that you need to do it. Like
I
I
was
get that
not.
vibe from you, Marissa. Like
Jason. Well, I have
this
to switch up
teacher,
I have to switch up my vibe.
Ashley,
I have to switch up my vibe.
Ashley's cheating off of her. You said we couldn't use our textbooks, and she's using her textbook. Like that's a vibe
No,
I'm getting from you. All the
I
bylaw
mean,
talk.
I really just don't like it when people don't use their turn signals. That's one of my biggest pet peeves. But
You like rules
again,
and laws.
I mean, I think they're interesting because someone had to sit down and say, like, "This is gonna be the rule. This is what we agree upon," and then, like, 2 seconds later, nobody wants to agree agree to it or agree to do it. And it's always, especially bylaws are like super silly little things, but then they come into play in an instance like this where it's like, oh, well, it proved a murder case. So, uh,
Score one for
yeah,
rules and laws, ladies
rule.
and gentlemen.
Yeah, I'm the nerd in this one. In this case.
He's like, gotta love me some bylaws. Love them.
I do. They're just like so fun. I don't know. Okay. I also used to make forms as a kid, but we can talk about that
I
another time.
100% believe that. I 100% believe that. I really do. I think you got a hold of the spreadsheets
Yes.
app very early. You were on top of Excel at probably like age 9.
Yeah, well, so you know how we're talking about family computers in the last episode, the only thing
Uh-huh.
I had on my family computer was Office tutorials. So all I could do was make spreadsheets, make databases, make the cards that you had to print and then like fold themselves. So yes, that was my fun
I
childhood time, Jason.
100% believe that. 100%.
Okay, so after the bylaws bomb drop in or bomb drop, mic drop? After the bylaws mic drop in court, the judge is like, "Listen, you guys gotta like this is unbelievable. I can't believe you didn't do your research here, DA. I cannot believe you brought someone into my court and charged them with this without looking into this. I think you should both have a conversation and come to an agreement." And then she says something that no one in Chicago would ever say. No one would ever say, there's a place around the corner that sells deep dish around the or deep dish by the slice. I'm going to go get one. I just need people to know tavern style pizza is the preferred style pizza in Chicago. We like a deep dish
Oh.
for a tourist come to town type of situation, but I am never saying, "Hey, I'm going around the block to get a slice of deep dish." And I'm pretty sure like not a lot of other people are either. I do enjoy a deep dish every once in a while, but not by the slice. It's not like in New York where you're like, "Hey, I'm going to go grab a slice." Like
Mhm.
it's not the same. It's just
Mm.
not the same.
So when I come to town, you're taking me to a tavern.
Okay,
So
good
what is
tavern. Yeah.
so what is the difference between the tavern and the deep dish? Not to get
So
into too much of a tangent, but
okay.
for those interested.
So deep dish can be considered kind of like a casserole of sorts.
So
It's
I
like
so
a
I'm a poser and I've gone to, Uno's,
yeah, you've had
which
it.
is supposed to be the Chicago style
Yeah,
pizza.
yeah. Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's a high-walled pizza with a crust and then a lot of meat and then cheese on top and sauce. The sauce is on top in the situation. That's a
Mhm.
big,
Oh.
big part of a deep dish pizza. A tavern style pizza is a double dough pizza usually. So it's like thin crust, but twice. And it
Oh.
and it's like a regular pizza, like a circle pizza, but it's cut in squares. So the origin came from it would be at a bar, you'd be drinking and you wouldn't want like a whole pizza, but maybe you wanted like a square of a pizza. So they would put a pizza out tavern at the tavern
Oh.
style.
Yeah,
And so you
wow.
could like just kind of like snack on pizza in a way, but it's cut in rows, and so there's always like this cool little corner piece that's like the crispy, crunchy part that everyone will fight over. But you can then get your choice of like, do you want an inside piece or a crust piece? And you can have a lot more variety. So tavern style is the way to go. And if this judge was having deep dish, they had like a very long time because it takes a long time to make a deep dish pizza.
They don't have them just ready there for you? Like, already, like, you gotta make it from scratch every time?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's like a at least 45-minute type of situation.
Oh my gosh. I don't have to wait that long at Uno's, but I feel like they probably have, like, frozen pizza they can reheat or something, if that was
Yeah.
my guess.
That's your pizza story of the day. But I remember like every single time I've watched this episode, I've just been like, no lady, that's not a thing.
You're wrong. You
Like,
you remember this episode only from that. Like, you're like, "Oh, we're doing episode 3 this week for the podcast? I remember this. I
no
remember
deal.
anything else on the episode, but I remember this freaking judge lady." You hate this judge the most.
Well, this judge lady, like I looked her up on IMDb. She only was in one episode of The Good Wife, but she played Claudette in Orange is the New Black for a number of episodes. So her name is Michelle Hurst, and she's also been on Law and Order SVU. So I don't necessarily hate her, but
Marissa's like, "She's only in one episode of Good Wife? Good. Get her out of here." She
she
goes,
said the deep dish thing.
"Are the Kings from Chicago? Should they have known that?"
I don't. I don't know, but that happens like every single Chicago. Like they always have to mention deep dish, and then like everyone in Chicago is like, "It's not deep dish." Like stop.
Slandering the
Anywho,
word dish.
out of this conversation, Carrie is able to negotiate no jail time. So he went to 5 to 2 to no jail time, and Kenny's just going to have to do some community service, 1,000 hours of community service.
Which his dad like scoffs at. He's like, "Well, fine, whatever." Like, bro, your son was legit like smoking weed, which at this point in time, like,
Big
is
deal.
bad. He had possession, so like, be happy that he's not going to jail. All right.
Big deal. Yeah, but Lauren's like, I'll make sure I'll drive him. I'll go. I'll take care of him. So that's where that case ends up. Speaking of his dad, his Kenny's dad, named Richard, is played by Boyd Gaines, who was in the show One Day at a Time, the original back in the 80s. He also showed up on LA Law, which was the original, like original Law TV show. And then was also in the movie Porky's as the
Oh,
coach. So he's
okay.
been around for a while. And then Shelley, who played the or who was the neighbor's caretaker that we talked about earlier, her was played by Henny Ann Park, who was in Hannibal. Did you watch Hannibal? I watched a couple of
I was not a
episodes of
Hannibal
Hannibal.
fan. No,
It
I
was
was not a
weird,
Hannibal fan.
but and then was also in the movie Don't Look Up. And Brian, bad boy Brian Keller, was played by Chase Coleman, and Chase Coleman was in Boardwalk Empire, The Young and the Restless, and One Life to Live. So the soap legacy continues here
He must have
on The Good
been.
Wife.
Who was he on One Life to Live? Because One Life to Live was my show back in the day. No, he must play like a baby or something, or like he was young. He was a young guy in 2009.
Are you looking at the One Life to Live wiki?
Probably going to be.
Well, one thing I enjoyed at the end of this case, though, was the interaction between Alicia and Lauren, where
Mm,
Lauren's like super appreciative. She's like, "Oh, thank you so much. We should get together. We should, get back and call. I'll call you sometime." And this is like the most real Alicia, I think, has been so far, but maybe in the entire series because
yeah.
she's like, "You're not going to call, and that's okay. Like, it's okay."
There's so many interactions I have that are similar to this for whatever many reasons, or just
Yes.
like someone that you for some reason have to talk to because you haven't talked to in a long time. You're like because you need something from them, and you're like, yeah, we should. Thanks for that reference for a job. We should really catch up, again and catch up sometime.
Yeah,
But for damn sure, but damn well, you're not calling this person ever again. And that's what Lauren was doing. I loved Alicia's frankness. She's just like, yeah, no, you're not going to, and you don't have to, and I don't really care if you do, because let's be real, like Lauren dumped Alicia for something that was out of Alicia's control, something that happened to Alicia. It's so Lauren's not the type of friend that you want anyway, Alicia. And I think Alicia knows that, and she's like, yeah, I don't need no fake friends. I don't need posers and busters like you hanging around me. So go on with your life. I don't care. Don't sit here and tell me you're gonna keep in touch, because I know you won't. I won't hear from you again until Kenny gets busted again with some dank.
with some dank. Um, I also thought it was telling that Alicia's kids were like, we were never really friends with Kenny.
Yeah.
We were just saw him because you were friends with Lauren. So I think they've always been like friends but not friends. And this was just Alicia saying, you know what, I don't need those type of people in my life anymore. I'm different than the Alicia that was in Highland Park. Like she's
I've got
noticing her own change.
Yeah, I've got Kalinda now.
Yeah.
We went right from that like conversation with Lauren to like, first plea bargain
Yeah.
mojito. I think this was like a Stern Lockhart Carter tradition. Like they already had their first case tradition drink. Now they're gonna have their other tradition drink, just an excuse to drink, basically. So I think this is supposed to be like, at least she's got real friends now, like Kalinda.
Yes. Yeah.
Just
Who
need you,
will,
Lawrence.
investigate the heck out for you. I mean,
Hmm.
like it's interesting. Well, one of the things, the highlights for me, and we talked a little bit about this during while we were talking about the case, but this episode really showcased the differences between Alicia and Carrie in the situation and their different styles and how they approach life. The episode starts off before Kenny even shows up at the law firm. There's this big meeting and the Will's talking about billable hours, and he's like basically like, hey everybody, you agreed to get amount of billable hours. I really need you to step up. I really need to put you you need to put in the time. And but there is one person who has been doing the most billable hours, and that one person is Carrie. So we talked a little bit about how he was like taking all the depositions and doing things like that. His time is billable in research. It's not necessarily billable in court.
Yeah, so he's doing busy work, and
Yeah.
that's how he's getting all of his hours. He's not doing anything that's vital to the firm. He's doing the busy work of the firm. So in that way, he gets his attaboy for having no life and spending his whole life in Stern Lockhart and Gardner. Because as Alicia puts it,
Yeah.
or I think as Will puts it, maybe like he doesn't have any kids, he's not married, like he's got nothing but time to do all this stuff. So I mean, as much as it looks like an accomplishment, Carrie just kind of doing like I don't want to say the bare minimum because he's doing real work, but it's like he's doing things in the way that he can get the most recognition at the time, I think.
He's doing the safe bet to get
Mhm.
ahead, basically.
Yeah.
And because he can't, because he has the time. There was an interesting interaction between Will and Carrie that I wanted to point out. Will or Carrie was there preparing for court reading, taking a bunch of stuff, and Will's like, you know what, you'd learn a whole lot better by watching trial lawyers. You know, why don't you just stop doing that? And he's like, no, I gotta study. And Carrie's like, but I am learning a lot from Alicia. Will's like, yeah. The nice thing about Alicia, she is a natural. She doesn't have to try that hard. And I was like,
I
"Ooh,
said, "Damn!"
ooh."
Cold, that was cold. He might as well just added the "like you, Carrie."
Yeah, yeah. And he like just walked out. Like it was, I think, his way of putting Carrie in his place and just knowing that he knows what he's up to, but it was still
What a
very
burn.
satisfying.
What a burn. You burnt.
And even though we got to see all the work that Alicia did in this case to like really prove everything with the HOA and all of that, Cary makes sure he stops by Diane at the end of the day
Oh,
and
Lord.
says, "I just wanted to, update you on the case. Cary, was able to
Me.
push the DA into a very favorable plea bargain. No mention of the work that Alicia did, no mention of the trouble and challenges he had on the case, but he wanted to make sure that Diane knew that he saved the day at the end."
Hey, Carrie, what's that on your nose? You got a little
Oh,
brown on your nose, Carrie. Let me get that off for you.
yeah.
Sheesh. What a
Yeah.
sucker.
I mean, I think we have to remember that even though Carrie and Alicia are in the same position, Alicia has many more years of experience on Carrie, and this is where we're seeing like this is definitely like a freshman year type of move in this situation. I remember when I first got my first like real job, I was like, well, I have to tell my boss everything. Like I just have to tell like what I did and how I did it and like all this stuff and just make sure that they know how valuable I am to the organization. Now I'm like, like, you know,
You're
you
the
can
wily old
you
vet
can figure it
now.
out. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
you got it. You know what
it's
I'm
fine.
doing.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what they learn from each other. And I like that they set this up so early in the series. I forgot how early this is. I mean, this is episode 3, so it really kind of defined Carrie's character a little bit more. And I'm excited because I remember like we are hype about Carrie for a reason, everyone. Like
Yeah,
it's a good character arc.
for sure. Yeah, he's a character that's throughout all the other iterations of the wife has been highly sought out. Like we want to see Carrie and what
Yeah.
Carrie is up to in the now times, which like Marissa said, there's a reason for that. Carrie's character does change quite a bit within this series.
Yes. Well, one last thing of note is that things at the house with the kids are still not, easy peasy. Alicia's still having challenges and really trying to like be a single mom in this situation. She's making breakfast. You can kind of see her trying to do everything, make breakfast, get Grace out the door, all of this stuff. And Peter calls. He's just like, "Hey, can I talk to the kids?" It's just like, not really. Like, we are in the middle of breakfast and all this stuff. And he's like, "Oh, okay. I guess we used to be more comfortable with each other's silences." I'm like, get off the phone, Peter. Like,
Oh,
goodbye.
Peter, get out of here. Like,
Like,
go back to your cell.
yeah, no, thank you. And Grace is really like telling Alicia at this point, like, I don't like this school. I don't like school. I wish we didn't have to move. I don't want to try out for soccer. I don't even think she tries out for soccer. She tells Alicia, like, hey, I didn't make it, but I doubt that she actually continues. So
Mhm.
things at home are still a little weird. And also when Alicia does like the textbook parent, like, hey kids, a friend of yours got arrested for murder. So like I'm gonna make sure that I sit down and talk to you and like tell
The
everybody.
classic the classic textbook way of
Yeah.
informing your children
Yeah.
that their peer has committed murder.
Like she makes dinner,
What
says
every parent has to go
everything.
through.
Yeah.
What every parent has to go through, yeah.
Yeah, she's like, "Hey, I just like, if you wanna talk about it, it's okay." They're like, "Yeah, we've been talking about it all day.
Uh,
Like, we don't need you,"
Mom,
basically.
we were on AIM Messenger talking about this all day
All
because it is
day.
2009.
Yeah. So it just, like, shows how they're still connected to that community a little bit and how fast information we saw this a little bit in the first episode where Grace was like, "Hey, mom, is one of dad's prostitutes my age?"
Oh,
So, like, this is just like another challenge that Alicia has to keep her eyes on as how fast information gets to her kids and what they end up doing with it. So,
yeah, I do like the moment that, Alicia and Grace have at the end of the episode where, Alicia's like, "Hey, I was thinking about it. I remember how much you hated your school that you were in before this. So, I mean, things can change really fast and, you'll end up liking the school too." And Grace, is kinda coming around by the end of it. She's like, "Yeah." She's admiring the view they have in their new apartment. And she's like, "Yeah, things are getting a little better." It's like, all right, guys. Like, you went from, like, high class to, like, maybe medium class. Like, you didn't take that big of a hit. Like,
I
you're
mean,
fine.
it's still like they're in like a high-rise apartment that
Uh,
has like multiple rooms and
like, you're not
like
slumming it, okay?
yeah, like and again, we mentioned the computers in the last episode. So like
Yeah.
they're not hurting for money and
I'm
like Alicia's
I'm
able
sure
to
your
do this.
school is fine. I'm sure your
Yeah,
school is fine, Grace. I'm sure you don't even have, like, metal detectors at your school, okay? Y You'll be alright.
you'll be okay. It's
Yeah,
gonna be fine. But, I mean, new school. What kid likes going to a new
right.
school?
And
But
I
I
have to gi
do go
I have
ahead.
to remember to give Grace and Zach some slack because as I said in a previous episode, I have not I most of the kid, like, storylines are always, like, a little for me, but
Yeah.
I gotta remember to give them some slack a little bit.
Yeah. I do wanna talk about that last shot, though, because this is before drones, and this was probably in, like, some sort of like, studio of some sort, but, like, it's very, like, tight on Grace and Alicia, like, looking out the window, and then it, like, zooms out in, like, this most awkward way. Like, I just know they spent way a lot of money on that shot, and I don't know why or how, but it was just really interesting. I was like, "Oh, this was before drones, before any of that." So the technology, this was high tech
Probably some
technology of its time. Yeah.
cranes involved, yeah.
Yeah. So that was episode 3 of season 1 of The Good Wife. It was titled Home, which I thought was a good title for this one.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, good episode. I enjoyed the episode. I mean, listen, I haven't really come across an episode yet. I mean, we've only done 3 episodes, but I've liked every episode, I'll say that. But yeah, so again, guys, if you want to reach out, if you want to help the podcast out, I mentioned in the beginning some ways, and I'll mention them again in case you forgot. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, you can rate on Spotify. You can rate and review on Apple Podcasts. We would really appreciate it if you took the time to do that. If you are on YouTube, go down here and click this thumb that you see down there, and that will give us a thumbs up for the podcast. Let us know that you're liking it. You can always email us at thegoodpodfeedback@gmail.com with all your questions, with all your analysis, with all your thoughts on the show so far, and any upcoming episode banter or chatter you want to talk about. So those are all ways you can reach out to us and let us know how you're liking the podcast, and really kind of connect with us. We would love to interact with you as fans, fellow fans of The Good Wife, and see how you're digging everything.
Yeah, be
Um,
our Highland Park friends. Like, let us
yeah, yeah,
know what's going on. Keep us in the loop. We'd love to hear
yeah.
it.
Stay with us. Don't shut us out. If we show up at your door, don't act like
Yeah.
we are some like gremlin or gargoyle or something. Marissa,
Yeah.
if the peeps want to get in contact with you, how can they do that? How can they check out things you're into
The
nowadays?
best place to find me on the internet is either on Instagram or on Threads. My handle there is it's me, Marissa G. If you click in my bio, you will see a link that talks about all of the other wonderful, weird things I'm up to that day. It could be writing about television, it could be on another guesting on another podcast, but I always keep that updated. So if you're interested, that's where you can find me.
Great. You can find me on the Twitters at JAYR1085. As far as podcasting goes, we've been doing the journey of Perfect Match on Netflix, talking about that with Kirsten McInnes over on the Rob Has Podcast Network. We're talking about episodes 7 through 9 this week, so come and check us out there. Actually, by the time you hear this, I think we'll probably have already done that podcast. So you can check that out on the Rob Has Podcast Network. Other than that, that's where I'm at. Until next week, you guys, stay good.